Title: Why Design is Getting Squishy and What It Really Means. The most human-looking design movement in a decade is being built by people who are terrified of machines. Across branding, packaging, web design, and visual identity, something strange is happening. Clean lines are softening. Geometric precision is melting into blobs. Sans serif word marks that dominated every industry from luxury fashion to mattress startups are giving way to hand-drawn lettering, irregular shapes, and textures that feel grown rather than engineered. Designers call it organic. Critics call it a trend. The instinct is to credit AI with starting this. That's not quite right. Pentagram, Collins, Buck, Porto Rocha, studios like these were already experimenting with softer, more human systems years before Midjourney existed. The organic turn was underway before generative AI showed up. What AI did was something else. It made the opposite aesthetic, clean, geometric precision, available to anyone with a laptop and 30 seconds, for free. That didn't start the rebellion, it armed it. Every design rebellion in the last 150 years has been triggered by the same thing: a production technology making the dominant aesthetic too easy to matter. To understand why design is going soft, you have to understand why it went hard in the first place. The template that Silicon Valley spent a decade worshipping, clean geometry, sans serif type, flat color, generous white space, that template has a name. It's called Bauhaus. And it's 100 years old. Walter Gropius and his collaborators didn't invent the doctrine behind it. An American architect named Louis Sullivan coined the phrase "form follows function" back in 1896, 3 decades before Bauhaus picked it up and made it law. In 1920s Germany, that law solved a specific problem: how to make honest objects for an industrial age. Steel, glass, concrete, the grid. The machine could produce these things efficiently, so the machine's logic became the aesthetic's logic. A century later, that same logic became the default language of every direct-to-consumer brand that launched between 2015 and 2020. Glossier's Millennial Pink, Casper's Geometric Serenity, Brandless, a company that literally named itself after the absence of personality. These weren't design choices, they were inheritances. And for a while, they worked, because clean digital design still required skill, taste, and resources. A perfectly balanced geometric word mark signaled that someone with real expertise had made careful decisions. Then Midjourney launched. Then DALL-E. Then Figma shipped AI features. And suddenly, the visual language that took a trained designer days to execute could be generated in 30 seconds by someone who'd never opened a Pantone book. This is where scarcity economics collides with aesthetics. Between 2017 and 2022, something extraordinary happened. Burberry, Warner Brothers, Google, Spotify. All 4 drifted toward nearly identical clean sans serif word marks. The internet documented it in side-by-side graphics that went viral for how absurd the homogeneity looked. The phenomenon earned a name: blanding. Mark Nichols, creative director of WMH&I, wrote in Design Week that branding was losing its personality, that brands were resorting to safe sans serifs, carefully crafted neutrality, and systems built for global scalability and algorithms. Every one of those brands had optimized for the same constraints: legibility on screens, scalability across platforms, responsiveness across devices. They solved the same functional equation and arrived at the same functional answer. And when a luxury house looks indistinguishable from a ride-sharing app, the visual language has stopped communicating anything except compliance with digital infrastructure. Compliance is not a brand story anyone wants to tell. When the cultural code for high design was clean minimalism sold, because executing it well still took skill. The moment that look became the default output of a free AI tool, it stopped reading as high design. It started reading as generic. The squishy turn, the blobs, the hand-drawn textures, the biological forms became the new scarcity. Not because they're harder to imagine, but because they're harder to automate convincingly at scale. Call it carefully, though. Imperfection didn't become a luxury signal. Most luxury brands are still chasing precision and control, not abandoning it. What imperfection became is a human signal, proof that a person, not a prompt, made the decision. What makes this moment genuinely revealing, and not just another pendulum swing, is that it has happened before. Twice. In the 1880s, John Ruskin and William Morris watched industrial factories churn out identical objects and declared machine production soulless, repetitive, inhuman. Their arts and crafts movement championed handcraft, organic forms, natural materials. The enemy was the factory. Decades later, Italian anti-design practitioners looked at the Bauhaus legacy, calcified into corporate modernism, and revolted with loud colors, absurd proportions, and deliberate ugliness. The Memphis group made furniture that looked like it was designed by a fever dream. The enemy was rationalism. Now, in the 2020s, designers are reaching for wet textures, microbial patterns, and amorphous shapes that feel biological rather than architectural. The enemy is algorithmic sameness. 3 rebellions across 3 centuries, and each one was triggered by the identical mechanism. A production technology made a certain kind of beauty effortless. That beauty lost its cultural charge, and designers sprinted toward whatever the machine couldn't yet replicate. The squishy turn is not a trend. It's an immune response, and the pathogen is always the same. It's efficiency. This pattern reveals something uncomfortable about what design actually is. We tell ourselves design is about communication, problem-solving, human-centered thinking, and it is. But it is also, always, about signaling. Visual language operates as cultural positioning before it operates as information transfer. Choosing a blob over a grid is not a UX decision, it is a values claim. It says, we are not the algorithm, we are not the template, we are the thing the machine cannot produce without being told to. And this is where the squishy turn exposes the contradiction it cannot resolve. Designers are using Figma, Illustrator, and sometimes AI itself to create forms that announce their independence from digital tools. The rebellion is happening inside the machine. The most amorphous, hand-drawn looking elements on a creative agency's website were almost certainly produced on a retina display using a pressure-sensitive stylus connected to software built by engineers in San Francisco. The aesthetic of escape is manufactured by the thing being escaped. And here is what complicates the argument further. AI can already do squishy. Midjourney generates convincing hand-drawn textures, organic blobs, and imperfect lettering on command. The frontier of what AI can't do moves faster than any design movement can chase it. If the squishy turn is defined by its opposition to AI's default output, then it is defined by a boundary that shifts monthly. The organic aesthetic reads as human today because AI's cultural association is still with clean precision. But that association is a product of timing, not permanence. The moment AI-generated design is more commonly organic than geometric, the signaling value of organic collapses, and the rebellion will need to find new territory. The squishy turn might be the first design movement that's obsolete before it fully arrives. Meme culture already trained a generation to read imperfection as authenticity, to trust the unfiltered over the polished. But memes worked because they genuinely were low effort. When high-effort design disguises itself as low effort to borrow that trust, the authenticity is performed. And performed authenticity has a shelf life measured in seasons, not decades. So the squishy turn is not really about shapes. It is about what happens when a culture can no longer use craft to prove its humanity. Every previous rebellion had a stable target: the factory, corporate modernism, tech minimalism. Each enemy held still long enough for the counter-movement to define itself against it. AI does not hold still. It absorbs the rebellion and reproduces it before the rebels have finished naming what they're doing. The question the squishy turn is actually asking is not, what should design look like after minimalism? The question is whether there is any visual form left that a machine cannot claim, and what it means for human designers if the answer is no. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you feel drawn to something because it looks handmade, imperfect, alive, ask yourself whether you're responding to the object or to the story the object is telling you about who made it. And whether you'd still care if you found out no one did. If this episode reframes something you thought was just an aesthetic preference, someone in your life is making that same mistake right now. Send it to them. This is the Threads of Culture,